Good evening, and you're very welcome back to the Women's National League podcast here on finalwhistle.ie for what, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, if you're sick of listening to us all year, is the last episode of the season. We think it's number 29. We can't count that high, though. We're too busy focused on football. Aaron Clarke joins me again for another episode, for the final episode, the final time this year. Aaron, how have you been?
Yeah, been good. Been busy. I wouldn't mind thinking when you talk about the final episode of the season. I always think back to when I was in Gothenburg, and then I got asked to do one, and then a couple of weeks later I get approached. How do you fancy coming on more? And it's just blossomed since then. It's sad to see it come to an end for the season because it's been a fun ride, and it's been quite enjoyable. And we'll have a good show this evening, and we'll finish off on a high note.
Yeah, we had you earmarked for a while, I'm not going to lie. So Gothenburg was never, ever going to be just a once-off, but it is what it is at the moment. Of course, Cup final last weekend, you were in attendance, but before we get stuck into it, we might as well also have a chat with our reporter who was at the game as well, covering for Final Whistle, Diarmuid Kearney. We bring him in, no stranger, of course, to the show. Diarmuid, you're very welcome back.
Thanks, lads. Thanks for having me back.
No problem at all. I don't know, Aaron, we'll start with you as the resident co-host here. Your thoughts on the game so far? Obviously, Shells won the game 2-0. We all know at this stage. 2 goals from a combined distance of about 16 inches. Thoughts on the game? Did the right team win?
I thought Shells were decent in the first half. Sort of, they had to get off to an early start. They knew that against Athlone. Sort of, Shells' biggest Achilles heel this season has been when they haven't, and couldn't have got off to a much better start. Some people say the keeper's foul for the first goal, slippy ball, maybe she should have held it. And Jessie Stapleton, the one thing I will say about her is she continues to make them runs, even when she doesn't get the ball. Look at the Wexford game when she got the goal as well. She made the run that probably 99 times out of 100 she doesn't get the ball, and it just hit off her body part and went in. And then Pearl Slattery, when she scored the second, you sort of thought cruise control for Shells. Athlone struggled in the first half. I thought it was maybe a bit of nerves or a bit of they didn't have the experience of the cup final, and it told. Like, you look at Emily Corbett had a run in behind when she got past the Shells defence and struggled. It was sort of thinking, oh no, this is going to be a long old day. Second half, to their credit, Athlone were very good. The goal that was disallowed, I'm sure I'd love to get you guys' opinion. From mine, it was when I seen it back, it sort of looks razor tight. You look at the camera angle, and then you look where the linesman is. It's sort of a different type of picture. It's hard to tell. And they also had other chances. Athlone, Maddie Gibson had a gilt-edged chance if she scores that. But I do think if they had scored either one of them chances, they may well have won the cup final. And fair play to Athlone. I think they gave full credit in the second half, and they didn't relent until the very end. But it was an enjoyable cup final. I'd say the players weren't happy with the last minute deluge of rain just before kick. It made for a good spectacle, and great to see over 5,000 in Tallaght as well, which is a massive positive.
5,000 for the Women's Cup final is phenomenal, really. When you think about maybe, Aaron, the first couple of finals, I was lucky enough to be involved in the final myself 16 years ago now, before some of the players maybe on Sunday were out of nappies. But there wasn't 5,000 people in Richmond Park back in 2006. There was maybe 500-600. And that would have been considered a good crowd. The journey that women's football has been on over particularly the last maybe 18, 24 months, has been colossal.
Massive. And you know what's funny? Just because you say 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, Raheny United lost the cup final against Galway. Shauna Fox's auntie was involved in it, and there was a picture of Shauna lifting the cup back then, and the cup hasn't changed. And there's a picture of her holding it on Sunday with Shelburne. I thought it's quite poignant to just show us how so many players get their inspiration from family members and people like that, where now it's starting to change a little bit. You're right, the colossal momentum is massive, and I think realistically you could feel the sense of the atmosphere in the ground. And to their credit, it wasn't just the Shells only. Athlone had a massive crowd there to the left hand side of the press box, and they were quite noisy even at full time when they lost. And it's great to see things like that. And there's a lot of talk now, will Ireland get a big game in the Aviva before they head off to the World Cup? We're talking about these sort of things, but for me, the fact of getting 5,000, they said 3,000 last year at the cup final, and I no disrespect to last year's cup final, but there was nowhere near 3,000 there. The East Stand was empty, the South Stand was almost empty. The weather was poor, but this year they come out in their droves, and fair play to the crowd for coming out and making it a spectacle. But like RTE showing the games, I do think TG Carr has made a massive difference though this year with the 10 games.
I think having the tickets on sale before even nearly the quarterfinal of the cup took place, where if I'm coaching a girls' team in Cork or Limerick or Sligo or Donegal or wherever, we can make an event out of it with 2 or 3 months planning. I think credit to the FAI for facilitating that this year. Now, it should have been happening a long time ago, but I suppose if you didn't plant an oak 40 years ago, the best time is now. And I think the FAI deserves some credit for that. I know we're not necessarily always on the agreement with what the FAI do around the league, but for that, I think they do deserve a bit of credit.
Like, I know, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what you think, but I think Emma Clinton coming in this year as part of the women's social media coordinator has been massive. Some of the content, the videos she's put out, things like that have just brought it on as well to another level. And I think that helps because the FAI is starting to step up and put a lot of promotion into it. Like, the funny thing is, I was watching YouTube and I'm seeing ads for the cup final. I'm seeing ads for women's internationals. When do we ever see them in previous years? We don't. And that's the sort of thing that with the new generation of people, if you can get the ads on the likes of TikTok, Instagram, they're going to look at them and that's where they're going to see, oh, this is on. And I think that's a smart strategic marketing. But I definitely think the fact that putting the cup final tickets was amazing. Like, you even have people like Dermot making the trip up from Kerry to watch the cup final because he wanted to be there, you know. And I think that's quite a show of how far the game has come.
Yeah, well, I have to agree with you on everything you said about Emma Clinton's contribution. A questionable tweet today about the rivalries in the Women's National League. Rovers aren't even in the league yet, so it's a bit premature. But we are where we are. Diarmuid, we'll go to you for a second, and you're kind of nice and quiet over there as my phone starts to havoc here. I'll have to turn it off. But talk to us about the game itself. 6 minutes in, Jessie Stapleton opens the score, and do you agree with the sentiment that it wasn't a foul? Because there was questionable kind of commentary from Athlone side that maybe Niamh Coombs had been impeded in that free kick.
Yeah, to be honest, in the press box, when the ball went into the net, we all kind of turned to each other and went, "It's a goal." We were like, we didn't know. Like, the ball went in. We thought that Niamh had grabbed it, had claimed it, and then that she was maybe pushed into the goal and it might have spilled out of her hands. We didn't really know much about what was actually happening. When we watched it back on the replay, some people had said it was a foul. It looked like it just had slipped through her hands and just hit off Jessie Stapleton and went into the net. Very much a fortuitous goal nonetheless. The second goal, again, it was just another set piece and they weren't able to clear it. And you thought that it was going to be fairly much from there. Even I agree with Aaron. It looked like it could have been one-way traffic. There was a good ball played down to Emily Corbett on the wing. She tried to cut inside. There wasn't a player there for her to put the ball into the box. It was just cleared, and from there they didn't really create many chances in that first half. But in the second half, they were a different animal. They made a triple change and they looked stronger. When they scored, when the ball went into the net from that Scarlett Heron header, we all thought it was in the back of the net. Naturally enough, everyone from Athlone and the travelling support from Athlone, the atmosphere was unbelievable at the game. It felt like a proper cup final. Even going out to Tala, getting the Lewis out there was fans from both teams. There was atmosphere going out there. You know, fans were getting rowdy. It just felt like a proper tie. And you know, when the ball was in the net and then the flag went up and there was boos and whistles and everyone said, "Oh, that's a goal." The Athlone media team, I can't say what they said down to the pitch to Tommy about the goal itself, but they were fully incensed. And we watched the replays back, and you know, even it was right, I suppose, to the left of where we were. It looked in play. It looked like they were onside. It should have counted. And as Aaron said, that Madison Gibson chance as well, if that had gone in, it would have made for a nervy final 10 minutes. And I know, having spoke to the likes of Megan Smith-Lynch after the game, they were waiting for that whistle. And even talking to Tommy after the game as well, he believes that, you know, if they'd gotten the first goal, they would have gone on to win the game. So, you know, it was very entertaining final, and definitely one that Athlone shouldn't be too disheartened by that they didn't get the win on the day.
Breifne, on one thing that Dermot said, the triple change when he brought Kate Slevin.
Bit of a delay there, I think, with Aaron's audio.
I'm back here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're going to say Kate Slevin.
The triple change. The triple change when he brought Kelly Brennan and Kate Slevin on. Kelly Brennan was absolutely phenomenal in the second half when she came on. I thought Kate Slevin added something to as well. And they sort of said, you know what? let's throw the shackles away. Let's just go at it. And let's just, if we get beaten 4 or 5-0, we get beaten, because they just went for it and they just pinned Shelbourne back. And Shelbourne defence, to their credit, they didn't concede many clear-cut chances, but Athlone were going at them. It was relentless. They were just trying to kick the ball long nearly at stage, just clear it at stages. And I thought if they could have got one, they probably could have got two or three. But I think the Shells defence done well to limit the chances that they actually had. And in terms of Athlone, like I thought, even I know they could see the goals, but like even you see Jessica Hennessy stepping out of defence, making runs forward with the ball, looking so composed, so relaxed. I think it just showed that I really think that if Athlone had another year maturity and they were in that situation again, they may handle it slightly different. They may look to do things slightly different. And it just shows that, like, I think Shelbourne's experience probably got them over the line in the end. And I think, for credit to the likes of Pearl Slattery, I think Noelle Murray has 6 or 7 FAI Cup titles now between Raheny, Shelbourne. I think she's won one with Catrins as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, they have a lot of winners in that team, and there's no reason why Athlone can't bounce back to where they were. Second best team in the country this year all round. There's no reason they could easily be back there next year. It was a day that was a truly enjoyable cup final. And like, the one thing that I don't think we mentioned the Athlone fans, but we didn't mention the fact that the drums and all with them. They were making so much racket, and Evoke done a good thing that they were giving out red flags, they were giving out blue and black flags to people coming into the stadium, which that added to the colour as well. It's like if you go to a different sport, if you go to some other sports, like I was in the Aviva on the Saturday evening and Ireland had flags in the back of the chairs. That's what it felt like, because all the flags were being given out free, and I definitely think that sort of added to it as well.
Yeah, those kind of displays really, really do help on the night. I suppose it also drags people who are there maybe for the first time at a game. 5,000 people haven't been going to games regularly all season, so it does kind of drag them into the event and make it kind of a whole spectacle of it. I'm going to pull you back in a little while to talk about, you mentioned about an extra year and whether Athlone will manage to have that squad available next year, because I think we're looking into a winter of a lot of change and a lot of, I suppose, new looks across the league. We had the announcement this week of 2 new teams in the league. No unexpected announcements really, but Shamrock Rovers and Sligo are already in the league, obviously, but Shamrock Rovers and Galway United enter. Galway United obviously take the place of Galway WFC. Shamrock Rovers become the 11th side. It's the biggest the league has ever been. Shamrock Rovers, arguably, if rumours are to be believed, probably the biggest budget that any team has had in the league and the biggest investment, and probably a step up from what other teams are doing at the moment. Again, if rumours are to be believed, we talked to Collie a while back. He wouldn't really tell us much about that. Aaron, your thoughts on maybe on what we can expect to see next year? What might change? What could stay the same?
Firstly, I'm going to use my political hat here. I'm not too pleased that there's 11 teams in the league. I absolutely hate the odd number of teams, especially when there's cup fixtures or there's internationals and teams that are sitting out for a long time. That's the first one. I hate 11. I would have loved 12, but it's great to see the leagues extending now. To be honest with you, it's probably going to be the most chaotic off-season we've ever had. There's no doubt about it. I think the fact that if you look at the article that came out from Dan McDonald in the Independent, where they talk that the financials that are coming into the League of Ireland, some of them are going to come into the Women's National League as well. That's going to put pressure on some clubs as well to have to pay stuff that they may not be able to afford. So there's lots of things. Your only concern, we've said this before, is teams don't put themselves over their means that they then pull out because they can't afford it. That's my main concern, what's going to happen in this off season. But the biggest thing is the players are going to be the winners, because there's now opportunities there for them that probably wasn't there, and they're going to look to take advantage of them. We expect to see some big moves. Shelbourne obviously will be looking to strengthen up where they are. Rovers are going to be aggressive. We know that. We'd expect to see other clubs, like you always get with a Bows and Rovers. If Rovers are doing something, what are Bows going to do? Are Bows going to try and do something similar? That's the question. Then Shells, what are Shells going to? Shells will probably want to be matching them. There's talk of Southampton owners buying a stake in Shelbourne. Will that help as well with the women's team? But I think the biggest thing is, while we're talking about budgets and stuff like that, that's all well and good, but unless we potentially move to a semi-pro league, that's not really going to be a help, because of the fact that the amateur status probably doesn't allow some of what's being offered. So that's something we'll be looking to keep a close eye on to see does it happen in the off season. But you're right in what you're saying. As much as the likes of Athlone will probably have to watch over the back, because the likes of Galway will be looking at players. You'll have to, if it's a tough one. It's a strange off season. I think all the lower down teams, like the likes of your Sligo Rovers, your Treaty United, any of their young best players, the so-called bigger sides will all be looking to try and poach them and try and grab them coming into next season, because it's probably going to be the most competitive National League again to what we've seen, and with so many different underage teams winning leagues and cups as well, it bodes well for some good players coming through as well. So I'm one that's going to watch with a keen eye how it all unfolds and what happens, because it's definitely going to be an exciting off season.
4 minutes and you actually said nothing. That's the top politician. You go for election next time the council is looking for people. I'll put you forward myself, Aaron, and that was masterfully dealt with. But in terms of the impact, obviously a new club in Dublin does mean that it will have some impact, even if it's just for sponsors, for supporters, for players, for coaching expertise, for even the people behind the scenes, the medical support, the media teams in these clubs. It'll bring so much, but it will also put a lot of strain on those other clubs, particularly maybe the ones geographically close to them. I'm thinking DLR, I'm thinking Peamount in the immediate sense on that side of the river. But of course, you do have Shells and Bows impacted as well.
100%. And the problem is we don't know the extent of the impact yet, and that's the scary thing, because if all the rumors are to be believed and what we hear is going to happen, it could have a much bigger impact than we realize. I think from a Rovers point of view, I think they need to be strategic with maybe their game placement next year. For example, where they're going to play. I think if they want to capitalize on the momentum that they're starting to gain, maybe playing a Sunday or playing, if they can play on a Friday night if the men are away or something like that, to try and capitalize on not playing the same time as all the other National League teams in Dublin. I think that's the biggest thing from a fan point of view that gets frustrated, is that a lot of Dublin games, sometimes they tend to clash, or say, for example, Shells are 2, DLR are 4. You can't really go one then the other. It's sort of a bit frustrating in that sense. But
well, you are the exception, Aaron, to be fair. There's not many people go to as many games as you are. Jim, from your point of view, of course, when we go down the grades in the under-19, under-17 teams, you're based in Kerry, but there's more exposure for girls down that part of the country and the whole west of Ireland, really. Under-19 grades, we're seeing a new team in Cove. They'll give a bit of competition to Cork City down there in the Rebel County. Finn Harps, they come into the league as well. It doesn't quite clearly say in the statement, but I'm guessing at the expense of the Donegal.
So I can come in on that just quickly. There was actually an announcement a couple of weeks ago that Finn Harps and Donegal League have actually merged, so it's going to be a joint partnership.
Yeah, I think the Inishowen League was part of that as well. But Dermot, from your point of view as someone who also lives on the West Coast, the idea that Cove, Finn Harps, Galway, Treaty are coming in at that level, that kind of bridge between 17s and 19s, that's got to be positive for rural Ireland as well.
It does, 100%. I know yesterday we were chatting to Erin McLaughlin, who's from Donegal, and she obviously went to Peamount this season for her first season down south in the WNL, and she was talking about when she played up in Donegal, and that their league had actually disbanded this season, just collapsed, and they were hoping to get back going. And now with the likes of Finn Harps coming on board, as Aaron mentioned there, and trying to merge with the league itself, that's going to be huge for that side of the world, that they have that platform. And then, we could see Harps develop a senior team in the next couple of seasons, but to have that kind of under 17, under 19 structure is huge as well. With the likes of Treaty as well, it's going to be big. But as we mentioned there, with the senior teams, the budgets and bringing in those players, we've seen the likes of Treaty, especially in the men's, they've been very much amateur, kind of semi-pro in a sense as well. Will players want to play for the likes of Treaty, or will they want to go to the different teams that will be seen? But we've seen Treaty produce so many different academy players. They've had a lot of youngsters coming through that squad, and it's great to see that they're being able to give that chance to play in a league like the Women's National League, come up against some top class current Irish internationals, ex-Irish internationals, just players that are outstanding. And to have new teams coming into the under 17, under 19 ranks, it's only going to benefit the future of soccer in this country for girls and women in general.
Yeah, that stuff is also mirrored, of course, at the under. I've lost the email here now. At the under 17 level, a couple of new teams there, up to 19 total going out. Of course, we expected to come into that. Finn Harp, Drogheda, Longford, and St. Patrick's Athletic. Those three are probably the most exciting additions to me because it's the first time they've been at this level. Drogheda United, Longford Town, and St. Patrick's Athletic. St. Pat's again, not a million miles down the road from Tala. It's another Dublin focused team, but at the same time, of the 6 new teams in that grade or the 5 new teams in that grade, only one of them from the capital. The rest again providing that platform outside. And we're really beginning to see the national leagues take shape, Aaron.
I want to throw a spanner into the works here. The likes of Pats coming in, that could be the case when they're ready to come into senior football, that we potentially go to the second division, have the 2 leagues. So that's when they could potentially be ready to come in. Like you've seen with Rovers had a couple of teams underage as well. I think we are seeing more and more of the National League teams getting involved, but you just want to be careful that it's done right. It's not just because they have to do it or because there's more grants, that it is actually the commitments are being given, because to have a women's team, there's a lot in it. We could see with the bounce that we've got at the moment, it's getting even bigger. So there's more and more commitments that are required. Just want to pick up on a couple of things, like even for me in terms of where down towards where Diarmuid is, like it's great to see more and more people in that, more and more teams in that region. We need more and more. Like I've said it on the record before, like Savannah McCarthy is one of my favourite players from Kerry, and for not many soccer players at that level. You've got the Dennehy's, obviously, but not many produced at an international level from down there. And I think if we could get more and tap into that region, there's so much more potential in the likes of Limerick, Kerry, Tipperary, Clare, within that region. And I think that can only help the growth of the women's game. From a treaty point of view, though, it's disappointing to hear Donna Reardon leaving. And we had him on the show and how positive he was. Says additional commitments. It's sad because I thought he'd done good work, but I think the likes of treaty, as Diarmuid said, the amateur status is probably a bit of a conundrum. But the problem is then the likes of Cork could potentially have the same thing, so they may be fighting over the same pool of players. And we saw a mass exodus in the middle of the season for treaty, which didn't help them. A lot of the youngsters going to the likes of Wexford, which probably killed them, and then Judy Keenan going to Athlone, where they probably didn't expect. I think the only way for me the treaty are going to flourish, and I know they do, I think they train there as well, is if they get the likes of a partnership with UL or LIT, they get the partnership with the universities, and that way they can actually offer something for the players to want to be there and to the players to want to play in that region, because at the moment it's going to be a tough road for them to continue to grow. And the last thing you want is, you don't mean to be disrespectful, but you don't want to see teams left behind in the National League, and that's your fear at the moment. And it's a scary time ahead in that sense, because fielding a team of youngsters week in, week out is great. You don't like to see teams being beaten convincingly week in, week out as well. So I hope that we can get a lot more improvement along that sort of lines.
Well, talk to me for a minute about Galway, because they're also looking for a manager at the moment. Nobody quite knows what's happening there. They appointed their underage coaches during the week, but they are still holding out for a senior manager. Will Alan Murphy put his name forward? Will he be approached? He's obviously held the men's position in the club before. Is there history there? Not quite sure. Good history, bad history, who knows? But Galway seems to be quite exciting at the moment, and probably down to former manager there, of course, Billy Cleary, who's now managing the university side, and there's an overlap there in terms of the admin. I know Porrick de Burka and Billy both involved with the university as well. 11-0 winners today, with 3 hat-tricks for a range of players on the sides. Shauna Brennan got a hat-trick, Chloe Singleton got 4, and Emily Corbett got 3 of the 11. Anna Fahy back after an ACL, I think, last year, so she's back with her first game, first goal in a late cameo there as well for that side. And you look down through that team, it's just packed full of WNL stars. Could we see a strong Galway attract players from Sligo, Treaty, Athlone? Could they come, because they've threatened to come good for so long? Could the addition of senior football, men's senior football, and Galway United bring that up another level? Or are we destined to see kind of more of the same from Galway, do you think? Maybe, Chairman, if I ask you that first.
Yeah, I definitely. I suppose, look, Galway impressed this year as well. Now, at the end of the season, when the news had broke that the Galway WFC were leaving the league. I don't know if that had an effect on the players going, what are we going to do next season? Are we going to have a team? And then, at the end of it, obviously, we heard that Galway United were interested in taking it over, did want to take it over. We were just waiting for confirmation, which we got yesterday. They do have, phenomenal players coming through that academy. They brought them up this year, and senior players. Aaron mentioned the likes of Savannah McCarthy is there as well, but they've got, I suppose they've got a wealth of players that are there capable of doing it. Whether we'll see the budget coming in now with Galway United, whether they will attract some bigger players to make the move out. You mentioned there the likes of, Tracy's isn't too far away. Are we going to see, people that are from the region who have moved, elsewhere? Would they say, I can come home now and I can play with Galway United, and we can compete and actually try and win the league title next season instead of going at a different club? There's going to be so many ifs and buts over this winter period of what's going to happen. There's definitely going to be a lot of change next year. I'm scared to see what's going to happen for some smaller teams if the bigger teams start poaching a couple of players. Will we see teams falter next season and it's like a big five and then the rest are just kind of sat there, just kind of fighting amongst each other for places? It's going to be interesting in that regards. But I like to see the league remain competitive. It was very competitive this year. I want to see it competitive again next season. It's just going to be interesting with two teams, the likes of Galway and Rovers. What budgets are they going to bring in next season against the likes of a Treaty United, who might be fielding a team of under 19s next season? It's going to be a tough one to call, to be honest.
Aaron, your thoughts on the impact of Galway United versus Galway WFC? Does it matter what crest is on the club? They're playing the same ground, or is it that little bit of a step up when you're actually playing for the official, established, historic side in senior football in the region?
You don't want to be disrespectful to Galway Women's FC, but you'd hope with the fact of it's Galway United, it's such an iconic brand in Galway. I do have concerns over the merger, just how it's going to work. We've seen a couple of years ago when Shelbourne merged with Raheny United, it took a good bit of time for the merger to properly settle in. So there's obviously going to be teething cracks. We don't know what people in Galway WSC are going to make the move over to help out with Galway United. And until we really know a lot more behind the scenes, how things are going to be run, how things are going to be, it's hard to say. It could be a case that it could be just a new name and that's it. Not a lot much changes, but I do think from their point of view, the manager, whoever they get, they A, need to get them in soon, and B, they need to make sure that they have a good, strong credentials in women's football, because in order for it to attract players at this level, they're going to have high caliber there. As you said earlier, you raised a good point, Breifne. Alan Murphy was the bad blood when he left the men's side. We don't know. He's obviously played for the club as well. So has he applied? No, nobody knows. Who else will be interested? I would assume with Billy Cleary being with the colleges, he may not be interested at the time. It may not be a time that suits him for the moment. But I just think they need to have somebody who knows Galway and has good women's credentials, because they nearly need to do a bit of a Rory Higgins, or what he done with Derry, or Declan Devine what he done with Derry, where he sort of got the players in and that they know what it means to play for Derry. He got them to do so. They know what it is to play for Galway, because I think if the players can buy in, it could be a very successful project. But as Dermot says, we don't know what sort of budgets or what sort of things they're going to have. I think the fact that, as Julianne Russell said to us earlier in the season, she's building a house in Galway means she's pretty much safe there. And I think using the likes of Julianne to attract players, Chloe Singleton, that could help, using them sort of players to get others in. And I think if it's done right, it could be a very, very successful, and we could see Galway WSC winning trophies, because they have had good underage structures and good things. My only other thing is, players have tended to go off and play Gaelic football and stuff like that with Galway WFC, or go and do other sports. If they go to Galway United, will they be allowed to do that? Will they have to commit to one or the other? And that's sort of something that I think, if they are to prosper, that they maybe need to have the players fully on board and not maybe playing with other sports, because it's definitely suffered from in the last couple of years.
Yeah, we've seen Rachel Kearns and Kate Slevin both kind of leave the club over those type of issues in recent years. It's a interesting time ahead, but there's lots of potential in Galway. There's a couple of names you've mentioned, one or two. Billy Cleary's name is in there. Alan Murphy potentially could be in there. Stephen Lally, of course, was involved with the team as recently as last year. Good pedigrees in the women's game, as well as like the likes of Phil Trill and others who've been involved at underage level with Galway in recent years, assistant manager to Alan last year as well. So there's four names that immediately come to mind when I think of Galway football, amongst others. Emma Flatley probably would have been in there, but she's working with the FAI now, so, and it might be a little bit earlier in her development to be a head coach at that level. But at the same time, she's a name that's in the reckoning. So there is potential there for someone else to come out from the woodwork from the local game as well. So interesting to see what happens there. In terms of that, we know those two are vacant. Looking around the rest of the league, there's 9 other managers. Do we think we'll see all 9 at the start of next season? I know we've kind of talked, we tried to press him on when he was on the show, James O'Callaghan, about his plans for next year. Will he still be at Peamount next year? 2 years ago in the league. Is that a good enough response? The second half of the season was very impressive from them this year. If the Sligo Rovers game the first day of the season hadn't been gone the way it did go, they could potentially have won the league. So they weren't a million miles off the pace, but do they need a new fresh voice in the... Oh, James is going to kill us now. We'll get text from him after the show. Do they need a fresh voice in the dressing room, or can he pull that back and recover?
It's a difficult one, because I know James quite well, and I know how much it means to him to manage Peamount and to do them sort of things. So, like, it's hard, because when we know what's coming in as well, if he's going to stay, can the club back him to what he needs to be back, so he can attract players and he can get players to come and play for Peamount. That's the biggest thing. I think they've got the underage final, so we know there is some good underage players there. It just depends on James how much the hunger's there. He's been with Peamount a long time. I think he first came in and was it 20. He's been underage managers for a long time, since the start of Lauren has been coming up through the ranks, and then he was involved in senior team, I think, from about 2016, 2015. So he's been in and around there for quite a long time, and it all depends how much James has the hunger. I'd say he's probably going to reflect back on this season and just think of the times where maybe the performances weren't where they were, that sort of let them down, because there's no doubt about it that they had a title winning team this season, and I think it's a tough one to say. Like, I think whether he stays or doesn't stay, I think it's important that we keep people like James O'Callaghan involved in the women's game. I think they're massive to helping the leagues go forward and grow, because I think people who have a lot of passion for the league, and you can see how much commitment he's put in, you don't want to lose them sort of people. In terms of other managerial vacancies, could we potentially have a couple? It remains to be seen. I think for me, the fact that when we spoke about this multiple times, Cork City nailing Danny Murphy down is probably vital, because that was one that you would probably say if Danny was to go back across the water, that they would have had to replace. But I think for him, it's good to see. I'm not sure how many we will have.
In terms of one managerial appointment and a decision, if you were to put yourself in Noel King's position, he won the league last year. He's gone and won better this year. He's won both competitions. There's extra competition next year. Do you get out on top? Do you leave with an unblemished record in terms of league championships?
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, because I'd say you may also have to assess the situation in terms of what players are there next year. Are going to be there next year. There's no doubt the likes of Jesse Stapleton is going to get an awful lot of attention anyway. I think one of the newspapers last week mentioned a couple of clubs that were interested in it. So could they have a mass exit again next summer? But then again, if they have the players tied down on contracts, that may help them as well. So
you might be allowed to have them on contracts, though. Is the other side.
Yeah.
Jim, your thoughts on that situation, Charles?
I don't know. Like Noel was in great spirit after the game the last day. I don't know if he knew himself that it was going to be, I suppose, the last hurrah with Shells. Whether it was like, I'm just going to leave as the manager that won the double with Shells. Like, I suppose he needs to sit down, as Aaron said there. Like, what squad is he going to have next year? Are we going to get player announcements at the likes of Galway and Shamrock Rovers, or who are they going to recruit? Whether Noel wants to to fight in a more maybe a more competitive league with two newer teams coming in next season, or whether he just says, look, I want to give it to someone else. And the likes of James at Piedmont as well, like he's such a big influence as well. Like he's one of those managers that players will be attracted to. If he contacts a player and says, here, do you want to play for Piedmont? Players are going to want to play under him. I know that was the case with Aaron McLaughlin, that it was like, oh, James contacted me and said, do you want to train for Piedmont? And now you're at Piedmont. It's he's got that that star power. You mentioned certain players at clubs, people wanting to play with them, but under good management as well. If he can bring in a couple of players, Piedmont could have easily challenged for the title this year, but they're not going to be dead and buried after one bad season. They might definitely come back again next year. But look, there's a lot of question marks. But as far as Noel at Shells, I can't see him leaving unless something really serious happens behind the scenes.
How much money these new investors pour in, and like, let's go get someone with real star quality. But then Noel brings that former Ireland manager for over a decade as well with the women's national team. Looking forward, and speaking of the women's national team and Aaron McLaughlin, of course, they're in camp in Spain at the moment, and they face Morocco on Monday. Aaron, your thoughts on that clash? Obviously, they have African opposition in the World Cup next year. I'm sure that's kind of half the reason behind this particular fixture. Will they get much out of Morocco on Monday?
Morocco are in the World Cup as well, so Morocco have a lot to build upon as well. They'll be using this as their preparation. I think the fact that they're playing a behind closed doors game as well, sort of a training match as well in the lead up to it against the same opposition, sort of like what they've done against Australia last year. I think for the fact of how late it was organising games and stuff like that, it didn't help that they sort of just had to take. I think the fact that they've had a camp this week is massive. If they didn't, it'd have been a big wasted opportunity with the camps limited between now and the World Cup. You've only really got February, April, and then you've got the June one leading into the World Cup. So there's not a lot of time. You would be interested to see if she gives some players a try. I know she's brought in one or two players who maybe haven't got experience. I think that the surprise name on everybody's lips was Kate Keane from Shelbourne, who hasn't made her Women's National League debut. I'd be interested to hear more from Vera just about the reasoning behind that, especially with a lot of good goalkeepers in the league. Maybe she's felt that from seeing her in home base that they wanted to just bring her in for a bit of experience. I think from Kate's point of view, it's a golden opportunity to go learn with 3 professional goalkeepers for a week and learn and get a lot of good benefits out of it. I think that the game is definitely useful. I think she'll try players out in this game. She sort of hinted previously that she would try and get a couple of players out. Louise Quinn could win her 100th cap in this game as well, Breifne, which is a massive milestone. Denise O'Sullivan isn't far behind. I think she's only 2 or 3 behind. So a couple of Irish players as well, also leading up to big milestones in the next couple of weeks. But I think it's a worthwhile friendly. It's good to get the squad in together and just to use the time to build on preparations.
Diarmuid, you had the press conference yesterday. You were telling that as well. Your thoughts on the mood in the camp when speaking to the girls over the weekend, over the last couple of days?
Yeah, all the girls seem positive about it. They're all, I suppose, going in with the same mentality that they're fighting for a place in that World Cup squad. They all want to put their names down on the list to go to Australia next summer. It's it's going to be an historic tournament. It's going to be the first of its kind for an Ireland women's team. So they want to get there. And I know the likes of Ciara Grant is back in the squad. She's obviously an older international player. She will want to come back into the team. Izzy Atkinson is back into the team as well, not getting as much game time as she would like at the moment, having moved to West Ham from Celtic. Did very well at Celtic, was very good at Shells as well, but her opportunities weren't as there as she would have hoped. So she wants to come in now and impress Vera. So I suppose everyone has that mentality now of, they want to come in. There is obviously a lot of people who are on the treatment table at the moment that, are they going to get the opportunity later on? I suppose next year, 1 or 2 camps, are they going to be back in time? Or I believe Leanne Kiernan I don't know. Sorry, is it Jess Zhu isn't going to make it to Australia next year? I think that's what I've heard.
Touch and go. So she's only had her ACL surgery just recently. Ella Malloy obviously had hers not too long ago as well. Both being involved in big parts of the camp.
Yeah, like there's if those two can't go, obviously there's players that need filling, and I think that's what Vera's trying to do now. She's trying to bring up players, players that have impressed in the home-based training camps, as well as those who are obviously playing in the women's nationally, more senior players, or even players that are playing overseas as well. So, it's exciting, and hopefully, taking on a team like Morocco, who are established and will be in the World Cup as well, will definitely help to get those minutes instead of playing a friendly, like I suppose like what we saw with Georgia in the qualifiers, where it didn't really help Ireland, to be honest.
That game, of course, taking place on Monday evening, 5:00 Irish time. I would imagine it will be available on YouTube to watch with a full.
The FAI said they'll announce streaming details prior to the game, so I'd assume by Saturday we should have details.
Absolutely. Well, listen, that's the women's stuff. I do want to, before we wrap up for the whole season, because we are about 15 minutes left in the season of the show, I do want to take a little bit of a recap back through the season and through some of the really, really impressive performances that we've seen from all 10 teams, all maybe a couple of hundred players who've played in the league this year, and there's been some really, really good goals, really, really good moments. So I have a list of categories here. It's a bit off the cuff. I haven't prepared this with you, so I'm not looking for outright winners, but I'm looking for people who should be in the shake-up for that particular discussion. So if we were to go with, let's start maybe at the bottom, the best goal you saw this year.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think Eve Mangan's free kick against Cork for Cork against Treaty was very good. Katie Malone's lob against Shelbourne for DLR Waves in the ball was brilliant. It's a really tough category. I think there's been a lot of very, very, very good goals. I think we've seen with the fact that more and more women are getting nominated for the likes of the Goal of the Month award this year compared to maybe previous months, compared to the League of Ireland. I think has shown just the quality of goals has improved. I think you could nearly put a YouTube video together and probably get about 20-30 absolute superb strikes from this season. We've had some belters this year.
Yeah, for me, Ellen Roy scored one early on in the year, just 1-2 at the whole up the pitch and just stuck in the back of the net, and I was just very impressed with that. But like, you could put a run of Ellen Malloy goals together as well.
Yeah, actually, just while you mentioned Wexford, I think there's two that stand out. Two from a Wexford game that stand out to me. I think Sarah McKevitt's goal against Wexford in Ferry Carrick Park, where she just took the ball on the right after running onto a through ball, literally cut inside on the left, and just pinged it into the top corner. It was a peach of a strike, and then a couple of minutes later, Ciara Rossler done something similar, went the other way. I think we've been blessed with great goals. You're right, Breifne, you could nearly have an Ellen Malloy collection. I think Emily Corbett scored some crackers as well.
You mentioned Sarah McKevitt. One has just come to mind, and that was DLR against Sligo up in the showgrounds early on in the season, and it's probably the best cross and header combo I've ever seen in women's football, and it was a pinged effort from the corner flag from Sarah McKevitt. She skinned the defender, whipped it across. I think it was Rachel Doyle found the back of the net with a really, really
I remember that goal. That was an
absolute cracker of a goal. So, but we're not picking definite winners, as I said, but they're all in the shake-up. We've probably forgotten more than we'll remember as well. In terms of the best moment of the season, what was your highlight? Stands out. It might be one of the weaker sides having a little scalp off the bigger ones, or just but the best moment you thought, that's why I watch football.
Sligo Rovers.
Jim, we'll start with you. Sorry, Aaron, who was it?
Sligo Rovers against Wexford Youths. Or Sligo against Shelbourne when they were 2-0 down at half time. The Sligo Shelbourne 2-0 down at half time, and just a scintillating second half from Sligo. That was the moment for me that I was like, these are good young up and coming side. I think that's probably the moment for me, probably one of the moments for me.
Yeah, I was at the Sligo Rovers Wexford game, and the save from Amy Mahan was just phenomenal. And Kylie Murphy, I felt for her at the end of the game, but Wexford probably deserved to at least get a point in that game. But Sligo's performance was just phenomenal, and for Amy Mahan to save the penalty that day was absolutely phenomenal. So I think that's probably a good choice. But I go for that specific moment in that game. The goal was all right, but the save was just unbelievable at the time. Diarmuid, your highlight of the season so far?
Oh, there's so many. That 3-3 draw between Peamount and Wexford had everything. At the end of the season, Peamount are there. Okay, Wexford are back, and then it was so late, and it's like, okay, it's going to come down to the final day. But for me, anything involving Athlone has been a joy to watch this year, just because of how they played, the scalps that they've taken, that they just had that attitude of, we don't care who you are, we'll just play the way we are and we'll get the results. And to beat Shelburne at their own backyard as well, that was just an amazing game. They played really well, and it's so hard just to pick one definitive moment though from the season, to be quite honest.
It's funny. I actually said before the show, and I completely forgot until Dermot mentioned Athlone. At the moment for me of the season, one of the moments for me of the season is Athlone beating Peamount in Peamount, because that's the first time that people really took notice of Athlone. Yeah. I think the second half performance to limit Peamount to just hitting shots from distance and hitting the crossbar from distance, for me, that was the moment that we thought Athlone are real title contenders.
Yeah. And best goalkeeper this year?
Dermot, I'll let you go first.
I'll take this because there's a couple of options. I'm a former goalkeeper, so for me, this is the one I kind of pay most attention to. My favourite goalkeeper in the league is Eve Badana. I think she's had a phenomenal season. But for me, I wouldn't be giving her the award as such this year. I just don't think DLR as a collective were strong enough. But for me, I think Amy Mahon was a phenomenal addition to the league. She came in probably not expecting to get much game time, and she had a huge impact, particularly in the early half of the season. And that maybe second quarter of the season when Sligo were actually one of the best form sides in the league. But I think for me, I probably have to go with Niamh Coombs as the best choice for the goalkeeper. I know she had a howler at the weekend, but I think overall across the whole season, I felt she was a solid as a rock at the back for Athlone, and she was the foundation that whole team grew with confidence through the season.
She's definitely up there. She's definitely up there for me. Rachel Kelly-Bowes, for the fact that she has never had a settled defense once all year, and the fact of she kept Bowes in games so many times where they should have been dead and buried. And for me, I just the fact she was even rewarded with the club's player of the year. She'd be right up there for me. Niamh Coombs, do you know what? I feel so sorry for Niamh. The cup final didn't go away, but she's had a brilliant year. I think Maeve Williams has learned an awful lot from this year, considering it's her first year stepping in when Dolly from Wexford Youths, the goalkeeper, got pregnant. So she stood in for her, and she's been superb, because Keith Gray has been a massive influence in between the sticks for them in recent years, and she's come in and looked a natural. I do think while the results haven't gone our way, you can name a lot of the goalkeepers. Abby McCarthy's had good spells at times, but Amy Mahon, as I say, though, she's come into the season where she was probably chucked in, didn't expect to play an awful lot, probably expected to play an awful lot of 19s football, and she's done really well. I think the young goalkeepers definitely stood up this year.
Yeah, Abby's a favourite of mine as well. I didn't see much of her this year, but she really impressed me last season with some outstanding performances for Cork. We better mention, just for the sake of completeness, Trish Fennelly-Hunt and Abigail Ronan, just to say they got to mention impressive seasons, just because Trish was probably the busiest person in the league this year in goals for Treaty. And to be fair, it didn't happen much in some games, but in a lot of games she kept them in within a goal or two of the opposition for long periods. So they never get the credit they deserve, in my opinion. Best rookie of the year. For this, I'm kind of looking towards under 17s, under 19s who've come in first season in the league and have impressed you.
Scarlett Heron has been very impressive since coming into that loan from Peamount. That's a really tough one.
Orla Deasy for me in Cork City has been super impressive. Yeah. Pixie O'Hara, Kerry O'Hara up in Sligo. Amy Mahon again, we could mention her. I've been really impressed with them. Amy Madden down in Treaty. I really liked her before she got injured earlier this season.
Do you know who I like? And she started to get we've seen little glimpses of her. Young Leah O'Leary from Shelburne. I've seen little glimpses of her and what she's being capable. I think she's a player to definitely watch out for. There's loads of youngsters, like you look, even in Peamount, there's the likes of although she probably doesn't class as she is a rookie. It's her first year. She's on the 19th. The likes of Tara O'Hanlon.
Yeah.
We've seen the likes of them come in this season, and they've impressed a lot throughout the season. I think there's been.
I was going to say Michelle Doonan from Peamount as well has been very impressive. I quite thought she added a lot when she came on up front. She probably chances were limited, but considering you're in an attack that has 2 or 3 well-established international.
Do you know what? I'm going to give you a name. She's not a stand-up breakout, but someone to watch. I'm very interested to see how young Lauren McCabe, Katie's younger sister, gets on. She's playing with Rovers under 17s this year, Ireland under 16 international. A lot of pressure on her shoulders. She's had a brother who's played League of Ireland, and Gary, and then Katie, who's the Ireland captain. I'm really interested to see to watch Lauren's development over the next year or two. Some people say she's a good footballer as well, and that's one name I think we'll be hearing a lot about in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And next on my list, best young player. Now, this isn't necessarily quite that young, but maybe under 21, under 22, maybe a year or two in the league. Who has stood out to you? Maybe Diarmuid, anyone come to mind?
I know one player definitely. I know she's definitely a youngster. Would have been her first season as well. We would have mentioned it would have been Emma Doherty at Sligo. I think she's been a really standout player for Sligo. I know she's nominated for the award as well for Young Player of the Year, but she's had confidence to boot for Sligo this year, and definitely for their performance this season, she's been very, very good. Muireann Devaney for Athlone as well just seems to just be a natural. To be like a player who's played dual sport. I know what we mentioned earlier about players who've wanted to play another sport but have been told they can't or might leave a club. Watching her the last day, she's the box-to-box midfielder. She's in the box 1 minute, next minute she's tracking back and almost plays left back for Athlone. The way that Athlone are operating with the 3-back system that they've used a lot this season. Definitely a standout player for me. But there's man, you put me on the spot there now, trying to think of more players than just
Aaron,
the two.
Yourself, anyone strike you?
I'm just checking if she qualifies. But for me, if she doesn't, she's definitely in the reckoning for a lot of things. Is Jess Hennessy. I know she's only 21, 20. She's in and around that. I think she's been brilliant this year. I think we haven't mentioned the likes of Jessie Stapleton was very good for Shelbourne. Another player who I really enjoyed watching this year is Eve Mangan from Cork.
Yeah,
I love watching. I think she's brilliant. She goes about the middle of the park. Dermot's already mentioned the likes of Muireann Devaney. Muireann's just the thing about Muireann is she's like the likes of Jess Stapleton. She's come on so much from her first year to her second year at senior football. And
Muireann Devaney, you say? I'll have to look her up. What? She's one of our Leitrim women.
She's got that fiery, like, hothead spirit in her. Even the last day, like, she was getting stuck in with tackles. Someone went past her, she'd throw the shoulder out, or she's got that mentality to her that, like, you want in those players, especially like to be the leader in the middle of the park. You want like a player like herself to have that kind of that personality.
If you met the family, you'd know exactly where she gets it from. They're all well able to get involved and stand up for themselves down there in Manor Hamilton. In terms of, we move on then to the final category I have here. Actually, before we do that, I'll throw one in. The best coach. I know it's one of the awards at the nominations. Who's impressed you, both in terms of results, but also in terms of style of play this year?
Jeremy, I'll let you go first. I'll be in trouble no matter how we say it.
I'd have to say Tommy at Athlone. The job he has done this year to take Athlone from 7th in the table last year and a quarter-final in the cup to league runners-up and cup runners-up in the space of a season.
Dermot, just be aware there was no non-league teams in the cup last year either. So they went out. So they actually went out in the first round.
Yeah,
where this year they entered in the first round of the cup and they got all the way through. Just to add to your nostalgia.
Like, it's just the way that Athlone have gelled, and having spoken to so many Athlone players, and the way that, like, there's the bond there. Tommy has kind of been that leader inside in the dressing room, and you mentioned, like, to go to Peamount and get the result like they did, to beat the likes of Shells, and to take it to almost a playoff on the final day if they would have got that result. And obviously the result had very Carrick on their way as well. But I just think that for me, the way that he's worked the squad, he's gotten some great players into the team that are definitely individually phenomenal, but as a unit, even seeing them the last day, look, I know they looked to have kind of going to been like, deers caught in the headlights of Tallaght Stadium. Maybe the atmosphere or just that game really it didn't suit them. But throughout the season, anytime I've watched that loan, I've been very impressed with the style of play, to play with the 3-back that they do. And you don't see them having to, to really struggle defensively. They've been fairly defensive as well this season. But honestly, for me, he's been one of the standout managers of the year for me, to be honest.
Aaron, your thoughts?
Yeah, you'd have no argument from me. Tommy's definitely up there. I do think the likes of the fact of what the likes of Sean Bourne has done as well this year, Steve Feeney as well, it's been some good. I think even we have to give him a mention is the work that Donald Reardon done with the squad he had and the players he had. The second half of the season you could see massive improvements. But for me, Tommy Hewitt, well, Noel won the double. The only thing you'd say about that is Shells are probably, in a lot of people's eyes, Shells are expected to do the double. So maybe Noel won't get the credit for what's gone on. But I think Tommy's had a standout season to bring the players to where they have. And you would consider, I think they'd only won 3 or 4, I think it was 4 National League games in a year previously to what they've won this year. It's a massive stride.
I think I'd agree with you in principle, but I think if you were giving that out maybe 3 months ago, Steve Feeney was hands down the best based on where they came in from. And the second half of the season probably didn't work out the way they would have liked to, but they definitely set down a marker for where they want to get to this year. I genuinely didn't believe at the start of the season they'd have double figures on the points tally. They not only double figured it, they double figured it. 20 points they finished on. Phenomenal achievement. Whether you included 3 or not from the PMAC game at the start, it's still 17 points on the field of play. Phenomenal season for them in their debut. And I think he'd be in the reckoning for me if we'd done it earlier. Second half, probably you have to say Tommy Hewitt to keep that side as competitive as he did for as long as he did. Huge compliment for them. But you could give it to Noel. Noel lost so many players 18 months ago, lost so many players 5-6 months ago, and still kept that side together. Won a double with them. Deserves credit for that too. So good to see a couple of big names in for that award in a couple of weeks' time. Final one I have, obviously, best player. We've got 2 or 3 minutes left in the hour, lads. Who has been your best player in the league this year?
If she didn't get injured, you'd probably have to say Jess Gargan, because up until the Champions League where she got injured, for me, Jess Gargan was a shoo-in at that stage. I thought she was absolutely superb. When she come back for Shells, it looked as though she was never gone. The glove just fit straight back on, and I think you could see that with Shells having her there. They loved her. The obvious one that's going to get mentioned a lot is Emily Corbett because of what she's done with that loan. I think she's had a great year with that loan. There's been multiples. Dermot, I'll let you give me some.
For me, another player. For me, another player that if she hadn't got injured, maybe we would have seen a different thing for the season. Would have been Ella Malloy at Wexford. Anytime I watched her play as a striker, just to see the way that she can take the ball, make the chances, put the ball in the back of the net, the quality of goals that she has scored this year, to earn the call up to the Ireland camp as well. She's been a joy to watch, and for Wexford, definitely one of the standout players. Obviously, you mentioned Emily Corbett, and you've seen her the last day. She's got the quality, and definitely a player that will obviously she has been nominated as well. Has been a standout player. It is hard to pick because I suppose everyone is going to have maybe the 3 or 4 standout players that you would have seen maybe throughout the season. I'm trying to think of other players that might be a little bit more off the cuff.
Top scorer in the league, obviously, Anya Gorman.
Anya Gorman, yeah.
But again, the more than you mentioned about Noel at Shells, expected to do that almost 22 goals in a season. I think 10 years ago at the start of the league would have been kind of relatively normal for any striker. Amber Barra was doing it. Anya was doing it. Stephanie was doing it. Like hitting 15 or 20 goals a season. It wasn't seen as a massive accomplishment across 20 games. Now it's a really, really impressive feat. And the fact that Anya
she's doing it as a right winger though. Yeah. She's not actually through the middle. That's the big thing as well. But I think we'd be a bit remiss if we didn't. I know we mentioned in young players as well. If we didn't mention the likes of the 2 Jesses as well, because I think Jess Hennessy's been brilliant this year for Athlone. I think for me, if you're looking for maybe an outside bet from the National League of someone who hasn't had an Ireland call up, I wouldn't be surprised if she gets a bit of a look in the next year, because I think physically she's just come on massively in leaps and bounds, and I just think she's definitely worth a mention. But the problem is we leave somebody out, and we'll always miss somebody. That's the worst thing about these things.
I think Kylie Murphy again showed how much leadership she brings to the table down in Wexford. She'd be disappointed one or two things went this year. The defeat to Shells at the end, obviously the draw against Piedmont, the missing the penalty up in Sligo won't be one of her highlight reel moments, but she's just so solid and so dominant in that team. Emma Doherty, probably worth the mention. We mentioned her in the Young Player Award, but literally she probably earned half, if not more than half of those points purely on her own determination to kind of create her own chances and finish Sligo Rovers. And she won games where they probably didn't deserve to get the win or the draw. She was the difference, and she was the sealing factor on that score or whatever. She rocked up with 11 goals in those games. I'm not sure if Sligo managed a whole pile more. Gemma McGuinness did contribute a little bit down there as well, but Lauren Bowles, I suppose, the mentions in for the girls of Sligo, but there were some impressive performances. Who stands out? It's hard to tell. We haven't really mentioned any of the Shells girls either. Pearl Slattery, and we saw with the second goal at the weekend, probably epitomizes her whole character and her whole attitude to the game, and she put her head in where other people wouldn't put their feet in, and that's why they scored that second goal and had that little bit of comfort towards the end of that game. So it's been a phenomenal season. Ireland qualified for the World Cup. Women's football is on a high. Aaron has his flights booked to Australia. Jeremy is trying to work out how he's going to pay for his. It's a phenomenal time to be involved with the sports. From our point of view, I've really enjoyed covering it. Your thoughts to wrap up, boys?
Probably one of the most enjoyable seasons.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's been highlights from the bottom up. Even the teams that have been struggling this year, there's still some really impressive performances individually and collectively over the last 7 or 8 months. I am so excited for it to start all over again, even a little bit earlier because of that World Cup break next year. So we'll find out more details of that. And we'll be back with you again in the new year for a third season of the Women's National League podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. I'm sure Aaron and Jared will not be that far from the podcast. We have contract negotiations with Aaron now over the next couple of months. Jared, unfortunately, you're boxed in. You're going nowhere. No. We do have some comments, actually. No, we don't. They're all totally inappropriate, so we won't mention any of them. A quick look through it. Saw a couple of words. We won't be showing them on air.
Yeah, no.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We'll be back with you again next season, as I said, from myself, Breifne Earley, from Aaron Diarmuid, and all the team here at Final Whistle who cover the Women's National League up and down the country over the last 8-9 months and the last 2 seasons, indeed. We'll be back with you very, very shortly. Talk to you next year.